Take this moment to call in our angels, our guides, all those divine, blessed light beings who love us, who hold space for us, who support us, who keep the lights on for us. We thank you so much. We welcome you. All of our animal totems, our spirit guides, our ancestors that walk with us, loved ones that have passed from this life that are here still in the memory echo chambers, supporting us, holding space for us, opening a way, the way for us. We thank you. We attune to the white light. We are that. I am that. And so it is. Good morning. Oh, wow. What an absolute treat that Will is able to be here. And I believe, hi, Mia. Blessings. Wow. Well, good morning. This is such a powerful, powerful time. How are you? I mean, really, how are you doing? My butt has been kicked. Yet, has your butt been kicked? You know, energetically, emotionally? Yet at the same time, there is this divine knowing that all is perfection, that all is exactly right, and also that I've asked for this. So have you, I'm going to read here into the comments. Oh, yes. I definitely feel different. Mia says, oh, yes. Boom, Will, boom. So, you know, today we've got a lot of things going on here in the conversation, and I'm going to get a little personal with you. And I'm going to be really honest about some stuff in my life so that I can transmit information through this story and pray that it really aligns with you, that it really serves you as you reflect at your own life. And before we go ahead and go deeper, I just do want to say thank you, everyone, and welcome. If you're just dropping through and this is the first time, I'm so very, very grateful. Thank you, all of the new subscribers to this channel. I really, really love and appreciate this community. All of my links are down in the Show More box. I'm an author and a speaker. I have books. And if you like what you hear here, go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell, and you will be notified every time I facilitate and share a new video. So thank you again, everyone. I'm so very grateful for your support. And thank you for letting me be here with you too. This eclipse energy is off the chain. And when I say that, I speak specifically to this idea that we are working on ourselves consciously. And when we do that, when we apply our spiritual practices, when we apply metaphysics, when we apply working on healing our lives in the invisible realm, understand that when you work in the invisible realm, you are working on your DNA. And understand that your DNA is intimately connected to the activation of your Kundalini, my Kundalini, our Kundalini, the planet, the planetary Kundalini. We are connected to that. Our DNA is connected to also the grid, the matrix, the collective consciousness, right? That network. of collective consciousness as it resides in this universe. We are all interconnected. People, nature, the planets, the stars, the planets, right? No, didn't I just say that? The planets. I'll say it one more time. The planets. And even things that are considered non-planets, like the moon. Depending, maybe you're into astrology. I know I am. And I'm no astrologer. Sometimes I like to pretend that I am. But one thing I do know is that the moon has a massive pull on my personal emotions. Do you feel that too? When there's a new moon or a full moon in the sky, are you aware of it? Do you have any practices that acknowledge it? Or maybe it's just leaving your crystals out to be cleansed during that moon time. Maybe it's writing an energy letter. Maybe it's something, right? Using that energy to do your own healing, your Reiki healing, your prayers, your meditations, specifically connecting with that lunar energy, that reflective, divine feminine, receptive, powerful energy, because you know what? The moon knows everything. The moon knows everything, and the moon is within us. The moon is the white light as it becomes activated through our DNA within us, and it holds memory. And as we awaken, the light of the moon that is a constant is given way to activate in greater and greater ways through our energy body, through our light body. And so we become light. We become activated through greater light in this way. And remember, this is why sometimes you might feel like you're having a nervous breakdown or two on this path, especially if you work with these eclipse energies. Because when we release and we break down the old, the tars, the toxins, the patterns, a space is given rise, a space is made for that healing to be honored, to be given a sacred space at the altar of our awareness. And then love, divine light, is allowed to come in and interrupt the pattern, whether it's a pattern of destruction, whether it's a pattern of addiction, whether it's a pattern of self-hate, a pattern of overeating, a pattern of always saying yes when you mean no. When we work with this eclipse energy and we pay attention to it, we become a co-conductor, a co-creator, very consciously in the pathway that our life is alighting and aligning. And when that light comes in to us, we say, bring on the light, more light, love and light. All right. Yet, these little nervous breakdowns that we have, these little like freakouts, which I have something to share with you about, is a part of our like calibration and acclimation to these higher frequencies of self that have always been inside of us, but that are now given way, that are now given a divine sacred space to activate, to percolate, to connect and align within us and all around us. So glad someone is talking about this. Mia says, this may be stupid, but does the moon eclipse presents itself more through our moon sign, like accentuated moon sign? Yes, mental breakdowns, emotional. And you know I'm a Cancer rising, right? Cancerian rising. I'm a Taurus sun, Taurus moon, yet I have a Cancer rising. So I'm a double earth with the water. And so, yes, I would answer definitely if you have, pardon me, making me cry. No. If you have water, right? What is it? Pisces, Scorpio, Cancerian. Is there another one? If there is, remind me. But yes, you are going to feel this even more, especially if you attune to these aspects. And so this is the premise of where I want to get to, is that when we consciously contribute to our lives and we pay attention And we are on purpose showing up, doing the work, being aware, placing love, doing our best to be gentle on ourselves. What happens is everything is given a right of way to awaken, to enliven, and to respond to us in the way that we perceive it. And I've said it here several times before, and we'll say it again. Your environment is alive. It responds to your perspective of it. Everything is alive. We have that quantum saying, right? A particle is a particle until you look at it. And the way that you look at it is going to govern how it changes from a particle into a wave. These particles, these atoms, they're just hanging out. That's what their job is to just hang out here. And it's us that are like, ooh, that's bad. Ooh, that's good. Ooh, that makes me hungry. Ooh, that disgusts me. However we look at whatever it is in our environment is going to give it the right to be whatever we decide, whatever we perceive it is, so that it will show up to us in that way. This is why, as we become a master of our time and space, a master of the words that we speak and the thoughts that we keep, we realize how bloody precious and valuable. It's a commodity, your word. It's a precious, precious, valuable currency. And as we really get hip to that idea and we realize that we are co-creating, my environment is alive and responds to my perception of it, then whatever I see out there, I'm going to be experiencing in here in my mental continuum, and it's going to affect my emotional wiring, my emotional continuum. And so we begin to become aware of how important it is that we pay attention to our surroundings and really place love within us and all around us. So this way we are being a master by creating the space of love. And all the time, ultimately, but especially when we feel that we are unraveling and coming apart, you know, this is when we get to rise up. So yes, there is a part of us now, these eclipses, 2 in July, 1 coming up in August. Boom! You know, and there's this part of us of being like, you know, just totally torn apart. And then there's this other part of us that is like, you know, inside of that part of you and that inside of that part of me that's just like bawling and coming fucking unraveled. There is a warrior. And beyond the warrior, there is an alchemist. And within that alchemist, there may be a shaman within you. And there, either way, there is a master residing within you. And this is where, yes, we get to fall apart. But we also get to rise up. And you know, it's interesting. A friend on Instagram who creates free energy generators, this amazing person, Purple Ohm Project, in Australia, I believe he is. But we were messaging and he's mentioned something about, I mean, he's really into all these astrological alignments and he works with them in his creations. And he basically spoke to something, and don't quote me, Dave, if you're watching, but something very general about, you know, just unplugging the universe, unplugging the world, and then plugging it back in. And that's what these eclipses are like. It's like we're getting unplugged from our normal patterns, from these old ways that we've just been moving along in life, and often very unconsciously. I mean, I've had so many ahas this week that it drove me to have my own mini freak out, my own mini nervous breakdown, which ultimately ended up being what I didn't realize at first is a Kundalini awakening. And you may be experiencing that too, though we don't have this language. And that's why it is important to have these conversations. And I thank you, Wisdom Seeker Forever, on Instagram. I want to read you because this is the inspiration for today's live stream. A student from years ago in Los Angeles, we're friends on Instagram, And she wrote to me this week. She said, hey, Tuesday, can you please do a video on what to be prepared for after lunar eclipse spiritual experience? I tried to let go of my past life and past relationships, feeling lost after implementing the practice. Yes, we're like lost in space, girl. Right? I feel it too. We're just like blue, 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 floating around. But that's just it, because we've unplugged. Remember that scene in The Matrix where he goes in and he sees that he's like in the pod and he has like all those, you know, lines, those cords stuck in along his spine, and then they get unplugged, and then it's like, you know, this whole shift. That's the epitome of what's been happening to us during these eclipses, especially if you've been working with them. And often if you haven't been consciously working with them, they're going to be working with you anyway. And if you don't know about astrology or eclipses, or you're not very spiritually inclined, you'll just be going, man, this is a really interesting time. I'm feeling more sensitive, more emotional, etc. Okay, but if you're working with this, oh yeah, we're going to be feeling it. And then like, okay, emotional, interesting. Okay. So I'm going to share with you, you know, for years, I have been documenting my life, you know, like when I was a child, writing in a diary, and then journaling. And then I became accustomed to using cassette tapes. I'm 46 years old, so I go back a minute, right? And cassettes is how we used to roll back in the day. Remember the big ghetto blasters you've seen, maybe if you're younger, maybe you've seen pictures in the archives. No, I'm joking. I know they're not that old. But I used to have a little tape recorder from the Radio Shack. You put a cassette in there, and I would dictaphone diary is what I called it, is that I was a songwriter, like really turned on, turned up for the most of my first part of my life. And so this was a way for me, when I'd get a rhythm, I'd get a melody, I'd be able to just pull it out of my bag and sing those few notes. But also, I'd be like walking, doing my thing, and I'd be like, this is my diary. This is how I keep a log of where I'm going and all my spiritual experiences. And it was really cool, because whenever I'd be having a really trippy experience, I'd pull it out and I could just totally document it. And then I could listen back and like, wow. So anyway, this has been just a natural way that I have kept record. And I did it this week. I was coming apart. I was crumbling apart. And I did it this week, and I'm going to share it with you in a few moments. But first, I want to give you some foundation, because we were saying earlier that this eclipse is the interrupter of patterns. And we are moving from being unconscious to conscious, right, in our lives. And so, how does this translate for you? And I'm going to give you my example. So we're going to go back a few years. I was living in Los Angeles. I was engaged to be married. I'm going to place us all in a bubble of light here before I go on. And I choose to speak only the most high words here that will truly serve this path that we may all learn by, restore, and be illumined by. And perhaps it will help you reflect on your path. So what happened is that over a period of time, my partner that I was engaged to became very depressed. They attempted suicide. And let me tell you, I've been through some shit in my life, some really weird esoteric stuff, and some really heavy 3D stuff. But this was the thing that pushed me beyond the lines, beyond. This made me stretch emotionally, mentally, spiritually, beyond any order that I've ever bumped up against in my life. This was the biggest life-changing healing event of my life ever. And it changed my life forever. When your fiance attempts suicide, I mean, it changes everything. So cut to, we had to change our entire lives. We moved away from Los Angeles. Now, you know, I live here in the desert. That's where we moved to, and tons of therapy, tons of working things out. But this is what I want to get to you about with the patterns, is that I started drinking I started drinking, and this is, I'm just being very transparent and honest with you, is I started drinking wine. And like, I've always been a, you know, enjoy a happy hour with my girls and have a drink here and there. And I grew up in Ireland. For 10 years, I lived in Ireland, where drinking is like what you do. Like, so, but this was a different kind of drinking, because this was this emotional pain, feeling like I needed to fill this void and really feeling helpless. I had to leave. Some of you know, you were students with me in LA, doing yoga, doing body sculpt, doing meditation, doing Reiki, all these things that I do. And it, like, all of a sudden, cut the cord, it was done. He almost died. We had to change our entire life, and we knew it, and so we did. And I, as a coping mechanism, unconsciously, I began to drink a little wine, and that little bit of wine became more and more and more and more and more and more and more. Yet I was unconscious, and I was simply just like suppressing, you know, my fears, my emotions. I felt that I had to really sort of take charge and be, you know, be the full-on nurturer, the provider, emotionally and mentally, even though here I am drinking on the side, this Reiki master yoga teacher, right, facilitator person, I'm still human. And I just went through one of the biggest things in my entire life. But I felt like I needed to hold space for my partner, who had actually told me in the hospital when I first saw him, you know, and his first words to me were like, fuck, you know, I'm still here. Like, he wanted to get out of here. And you can imagine being the partner on the other side of that and being infinitely, eternally feeling this love for your other half, so to speak, but knowing that there's a part of them that doesn't want to be here at all, and to the point where they literally attempted suicide, got picked up by some strangers on the side of the road who called the ambulance, who just in time took him to the ER. Anyway, so you can imagine the confusion. Wine, 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 you know, just like all the, you can imagine all the crazy, and having to pack your whole life up and leave your life, leave your students, and leave your everything and move. Anyway, it was anyway, so I started drinking a lot, and I started drinking more and more and more and more and more and more and more, to the point where I was drinking, full disclosure here, about 4 bottles of wine a week. And I know, and I mean, that sounds like so much alcohol. And it was, and it is, yet I had slowly doled myself, and I had built up this tolerance over like a 2-year period where I could drink more and more and more and more and more and more and more. And while we were doing our therapy and, you know, going through all our stuff, and there's so much more to that story, but I'm going to just end it there so I can get on to the point here. The end of that story, though, is that despite all of our therapy and the healing path for 2 years that happened after that, we ended up parting ways, and we're still friends, and I'm very grateful for that. Yet, what it left me with, so that's a whole thing in itself, yet what it left me with was this residual pattern. So remember, these eclipses, interrupter of patterns. This left me with this pattern of drinking wine. I just turned wine into water right here, by the way. It can work the other way around. Water into wine and wine into water. Pardon me a second. So, and I have my Beyonce fan on here. I'm in the desert. It's getting hot, summer. So, this left me with the pattern of drinking wine, of just having the taste, right? This, like, I even, so we broke up, he moved out, but here I was still with this pattern, this addiction. This had become an addiction. over 2 years that was at first just this comforting glass of wine, 2 glasses of wine, 3 glasses of wine, a half bottle turned into a whole bottle, turned into 4 bottles a week. And whether it's food for you, whether it's sex for you, whether it's, heroin, crack, whether it's cigarettes, whether it's sugar, whether it's tobacco, whether it's weed, whether it's alcohol, these are the patterns, these reactions, these triggers, these things that we go to alter our state of consciousness, either to numb us or bring us closer to truth. And for me, I was numbing myself to take me further away from what I was seeing, from what I was experiencing. So I was left with this pattern, which I'm very proud of, that now we've been separated for over a year. And at the beginning, it was really hard because I was drinking. I was still like drinking. I started to cut down, but even still drinking that much without this partner in my life now, I was beginning to realize like how it was becoming harder as I was healing from that relationship and gathering my light, coming back into my power, getting clear with my internal vision and my heart and all this stuff. And then feeling this part of my higher self that's like, okay, let's get ready. Let's get to work. You've got these books. You're going to be online. You're going to be redoing your website and all this stuff. But here I am, hungover and drained from drinking and having a very hard time just getting my act together. But unconscious, not even seeing that it's because I'm still in this pattern of drinking. Anyway, so as time goes on, still meditating every day, still praying, still being spiritual, still, facilitating. Right? And then slowly unraveling, these awarenesses come where I'm going like, whoa, I think one day I took the recycling out and I saw all these empty bottles in the bin. And it was this moment of clarity. I just was unconscious before that. And I really saw myself and I saw what was going on. And I thought, okay, I want to start exercising. I want to start, hiking more. And I don't feel like doing any of that when I'm just constantly hungover, just like that little dingy feeling when you drink all the time. So I started making a shift consciously. Anyway, I worked myself down to 2 bottles a week. It sounds ridiculous even saying this. And even last night when I was putting this together, what I'm going to play for you here shortly, I was thinking that maybe we'll start, I don't know, I've got so many things on my plate, but maybe at some point later, because, the majority, like 90% of the students, the Reiki students that I work with, come from addiction, whether it's crystal meth, whether it's cocaine, whether it's alcohol, whether it's weed. And so I feel that there is a community, a spiritual community that's really working through these addiction patterns. And I felt a tingle last night that maybe there's a place for us that we could have a hub where we could come together once a month. So anyway, just putting that out there, and we'll see where that goes. But now eventually then so this gets to this week, right? These eclipses. So I've worked it out, 2 bottles a week, which still sounds like so much. Now on the other side of it, and then eventually then working to the point where it's like I could get a bottle of wine and it would last so long that I'd even have to like throw it out because it would go bad. I'd have a glass one night and maybe not the other night, and then maybe on the 3rd night I'd have another glass with my dinner, and then I'd maybe go another couple nights, and then oh no, it's gone off, throw it out, So anyway, so it petered down to the point where I don't even think about it anymore. Like I'm not even there anymore. And I'm very grateful, but it's taken conscious work and application and choosing and committing and discipline and willpower, 3rd chakra, willpower. And it's also been helped by my angels and guides. So again, what patterns are you seeing? Are you sensing a parallel for you on some level here? The point is that I got to the place where I no longer am in that pattern of the 4 bottles a week. Monday night, I decide that I want a drink. And I haven't had a drink in a while. And I'm like, I want a little drink. And this is going to sound ridiculous, but again, full disclosure here with this story. So once before, I remember I was out somewhere and I someone said, hey, what do you want to drink? And I said, oh, I'll have a glass of white wine. And they brought me back a can of wine. And I was like, this is so weird, but it was like delicious. And I'm at the grocery and I see these cans of that wine. And I was like, you know what? This is perfect. It's a can. It's not a bottle, because I'm aware now of my addictive of that thing. And I don't want to, like, I don't really need to buy a bottle of wine. You know, I just want to have a glass, maybe two. I don't need to have a whole bottle sitting there. So I'm like, oh, this is perfect. I'll buy this little can. I've had this stuff before. It's delicious. It's great. I'll have it with my dinner. So I come home, I drink it. The next day, I have this headache from hell. I've become completely unraveled. And I'm wondering what's going on. Meanwhile, in the background, just like you, I've been doing all this work with the eclipses and the moon and writing my letters and saying my prayers and doing my affirmations and like really like lighting the candles and really getting clear in here and sending grids, like activating myself, placing the awareness of how and where I wish my life to manifest in the ways that I know are true to me. And let me get this addiction, let me get this pattern out of the way so that I can shine, so that we can just naturally abide in our fullness, in our peace, in our grace, in our glory. And I've been doing all this stuff with these eclipses, the new moon in July, the full moon in July, and then I have this can of wine. The next day I wake up, and I'm going to play this for you, okay? This is what happened. And then we're going to come back, and we're going to talk about this. So give me a moment. And so this is what happened is that I went, so now sometimes, because cassette tapes aren't always that easy to find, I use the phone as my dictaphone diary, as I was telling you earlier. So I hit record, and I had a meltdown. And that's what I'm going to share with you. So I'm going to share my screen. We're going to get on here. And I'm going to actually turn the AC off. So the volume might be kind of odd for this. So just be aware, be warned, if you will. But I'm sharing this with you from my heart to yours, because I feel that we all are going through this on some level. So blessings. Okay, so I feel like I need to document this, and I feel like I'm on the verge. And I know it's perfect, but I have completely come apart. Completely come apart. And I know it's okay. It's okay. I know that there's so many things at play right now too. The DNA is fucking a fucking number on me. And it's like, it's so exhausting. And it's just so unraveling, but at the same time, I know. I know that there's so many things at play right now too. The DNA is fucking... It's going through its motions. You know, I got really confused, and I have journaled about this. And I am so fucking frazzled right now. I can't even tell you. I'm like, my insides have the shakes right now. Like, I feel so, like I'm so fucking coming apart. Fasten your seatbelt. You know? But it's all the adjustments. It's all the adjustments in our frequency raising, in getting what we've asked for, through our prayers, through our DNAs. It's time to tell. It's time to tell those people that you feel you know from before. It's time to tell them that. It's time to start threading that grid. It's time to start calibrating a multidimensional, a deeper level of union and reunion. Well, I'll tell you this, it really doesn't matter, because this apparently is just a big illusion. This whole life and this whole matrix of the world and, you know, time and society and the way we're organized and indoctrinated and taught history, and we're taught how to live and given only so many options, and it's all it is. It's just breaking out of that. Breaking out of that mold. But man, we've been here before. This is not our first rodeo. We have sown seeds. We have planted karmas. We have had multiple relationships and families and family members that you are reunioning with now. And it's time to pay attention to that. It's time. And where it's appropriate, it's time to call it out and be like, I know you. It doesn't matter if they remember you in the same way or not. And that's how it is. If you have the aha about it, then you get to have the responsibility, as you are guided for the highest good, to make it so. To do something for yourself that is restorative, meditative, Reiki, meditate. Do so without the guided meditation, without the harp music in the background, without the crystal bowl, without anything, just your willingness to show up and to serve yourself, to do the yoga pose, or to really just pause and take those few breaths is what we get to do. And just show up, and then just allow for that stillness, that silence, that spaciousness to be. Let yourself be present with it, and let it do the work. Let the normal, the 3D levels of your being restore, hit homeostasis again. Let that wisdom do it for you. You just show up. As well, we had the Kundalini realization, and that it feels that these little bubbles are popping inside of me, and I'm like, oh, that's the Kundalini. And it has that physical feeling, almost like if you've ever taken ecstasy, and that like cerebral spinal fluid doing its dance, and it feels that way. It's also, at the same time though, I feel that because all of these DNAs are really reconfiguring, like deep, all the way, just undoing old toxic karmas and paths and beliefs and systems within systems of grids that we're connected to. It's breaking up the tars, and so as these bubbles pop, you're on this roller coaster of Kundalini ecstasy that is like hell at the same time. But it's in just being fucking with it, just showing up and being present with it, that if there's work, that's what the work is. It's just being with it. This is your energy. This is your energy body recalibrating, redefining.
these are growing pains, multidimensional growing pains. Ride the waves, be gentle on yourself, and honor, exercise your spiritual will, honor the discipline of listening, attuning to your truth, and following through on its guidance. Now, another one is the realization of that Instagram post and how, boom, drop the mic, we can all go home now. And that's exactly it, home. The moment we do that, and as we keep doing that, we accumulate home, the feeling realization of oneness, heaven on earth. Thank you.
Okay, so I mentioned home, and I mentioned that Instagram post, and I want to play it for you because it's just a minute long, and it's going to lead us into this next part. So let me see here how I go ahead and I do this. It might bring you back to me here. I want to, because it's about this going home that is the ball dropped for me yesterday when I listened back to this recording. And so I want to bring you in and just play this 1 minute. If you know, you're a subscriber here to my channel, I'm, again, very, very grateful. And you know I do a weekly tarot energy forecast. If you follow me on Instagram, I post little 1 minute mini highlights from our weekly tarot so we can stay attuned and aligned with what those messages are. And so this is from my Instagram. Again, I'm not sure how the volume's going to be, so here we go.
Ooh, that's it. Managing your yes and no's with maturity. Consciously. That's how you start to just naturally file into your life purpose, file into living the life that you love to live, when you're honest, when you're true to yourself. And that's it. Drop the mic. We can all go home. Isn't it? Meditate. Meditate, meditate, meditate. That's your way home. That's how you stay in tune with your high priestess, with the high priest within you, whatever name you give it, with God, source, love, the Buddha. Stay spiritually and emotionally grounded this week so that you have the containment of the throat and the third eye, that containment of the throat and the third eye, the words you speak and the visions, how you see, how you perceive your environment will truly reflect the truth of you. Ooh.
Okay, so we're going to bring you back in. I'm going to put the AC back on here as well. It's a bit warm. Okay, so boom, there you go. That was my breakdown this week. Okay, so I'm just gonna look through the comments here. Mia says, I feel like I have some important job to do, but not sure yet what it is, and I am anxious to complete it, but do not know what it is. I only keep guessing. I am 31, I remember. And then Will says, oh, Tuesday. Thank you. You're welcome. And thank you too. I hope I didn't flash anyone. Shit. Well, it's too late now. I can always go back in and edit if I did. Okay. So, yes, this is very real. But coming back to this can of wine, you see, I had this on Monday night, and it was just a can of wine. It wasn't 4 bottles of wine, yet it was enough of a part of the pattern, you see, to get in there alchemically with all I've been doing TFT, tapping, doing my things, and like we were saying, all these prayers and affirmations and burning stuff and lighting candles, all this stuff. Honey child, let us not forget that when we do that kind of work, that shit is for real. And especially if you're for real, like really calling it in, this is going to have some major effects inside of you and on the outside of you. So I drank my little can of wine. The next morning I wake up and I'm like totally And by the way, I had a headache that did not end pretty much until I woke up today from that one little can of wine. It did this number in the frontal lobe. And I'm thinking, geez Louise, I mean, this is the kind of like hangover that I would get from drinking like a bottle of wine, not like a little can of, like I couldn't believe it. But then as I meditated and I sat with it, I was like, oh, my higher self was like, hello, that little can of wine represents all of those bottles of wine, all this pattern that you've been unconsciously, slowly gaining more consciousness in, but that you've been unconsciously participating in for this period of time. And so that one little can of wine brought me back into this powerful place where I realized that it was perfect, that it had happened. And it was almost designed, my pattern, my addiction pattern with that was divinely designed, that I would go for that can at that exact time on that night, do whatever I, had my little can of wine that night, woke up the next day completely frazzled, all hungover, DNA activating. And it was almost like this, my pattern of addiction brought me into this perfect time space continuum that when this stuff was ready to get blown out of the water and me with it, it was on. And so what happened is for that whole day, and even through some of yesterday, I had a very, very hard day. Oh, that was yesterday. I think that was yesterday. Where am I going with this? I recognized the pattern, and that one little can of wine was representing the entire pattern, and where it really had me look at my relationship with this substance. So what are you being called to really look at? And I am going to go back to your query here in the comments, Mia, in just a moment. I just wanted to finish that little story and sum up, what I was showing you here on the screen with my little dictaphone diary, is that it was absolutely perfect, but it had connected to the residual tar, the toxic layer within the substrata of my energy vehicle that has, over these periods of these years, contained the blueprint of that sticky tar shadow film of toxins and all the emotional turmoil and pain that I went through with my ex and just my own addiction stuff. My father in the past was addicted to heroin. They say that stuff travels in the genes. I feel that we don't need to carry that. Yet in a 3D thing, I'm thinking, oh, that's interesting, that addiction grid in my family. So where are your patterns? Are they with, having an affair, creating triangles, 3 people in one relationship? And did you see that with your parents? Is it overeating or not eating enough? Feeling bulimic because of something you were taught or told? It's like all these different ways. For me, this week, it was the wine. But this stuff got blown out of the water so much, and I felt so icky. I mean, like I was saying, I felt like I was on this continual roller coaster that wouldn't stop. This roller coaster inside of me that just was going and going. And it was like I was tripping in a way, because it felt like that, like just the sticky, icky stuff unwielding and activating, yet at the same time, ecstasy, like complete, like you could feel the orgasm under the pain. The orgasm of life, of the vitality of your divine life force energy, like really getting turned on, but at the same time, it has to break through that webbing, that tar, that sheath of all that icky sticky that, maybe it's been building for a year. Maybe this is a pattern you're working on for several years. Maybe it's a chunk of time. Maybe it's a past life thing too. And it's all interconnected. And so I was feeling then through this like ecstasy, this hellish ecstasy, feeling so disgusting. My body was just in so much pain and so aching. And I'm thinking, from this one can of wine? And it's like, no, it's not this one can of wine. We are, the universe, these eclipses, all this work that I've been praying and drumming and all this stuff. It's like using this divine timing. Here it is, boom, now to work these patterns out. And so hence the nervous breakdown, the freak out, the like collapsing of self, the interruption of patterns, again, that we have asked for. We've been asking, how do I be more my true self? How do I embody more my higher self? How do I rise up in this world? Well, honey child, believe me. So when we ask, it doesn't always happen when we think it's going to happen or how we think it's going to happen, but it's going to happen, especially if you ask with sincerity and it's divinely aligned and the time is right. Get ready. Fasten your seatbelts is right. But so this Kundalini, I recognize, because at first I was feeling like I just felt like really awful and really just icky, sticky, painful aches and pains and this huge headache thing. And I had to work and run around out here in the desert heat. And it was grueling. But I was like, as I sat and I would meditate, what I kept getting is my higher self is like, yes, be gentle on yourself, be kind, but rise up. This is not the time to turn away and to look away. This is not a time to try to numb yourself out of this. This is an altered state of consciousness that you co-created through your dreams, your wishes, your intentions. And I'm talking to you, my dear viewers, as well as to myself, as my higher self did to me. And it was like, this is time for you to suck this up. You asked for this. Rise up. Write it out. Feel the icky sticky. Feel the emotions. Cry some more if you need to. Like, get it out. Like, wring out the sponge of self. Get in there by just being with it, by owning it. Ride the roller coaster of these aches and pains, of these growing pains, these energy growing pains. And so I did. And as I sat with it further, I realized my body, my energy body was saying to me, oh, and by the way, these little pops, I mean, I was literally feeling these like little bubbles like popping, almost when you crack your knuckles or you crack your back or something. It felt like that, but there wasn't a bone pop or a joint pop, but it energetically felt like that. And when I was asking, and this is for me, but it's also for all of us, if you're feeling this, that it's our Kundalini awakening, rising. It's the DNA. It's us at the DNA level. The Rubik's cubing of our DNA. It's part of that DNA going to sleep, that we don't need those patterns anymore. We don't need those memories, that cellular memory in our energy body. We don't need those layers of tar anymore. We're ready to stand in our true power and authority with courage, trust, and faith. And so those old DNAs that are structuring and holding those old patterns of addiction, of whatever it is that holds you back, are getting shut the fuck down, so that you, as your light being, true power and authority of self, can simply reside in the light. And that's what this is all about. And it's that rising up, it's standing with it, it's sitting with it and being like, this feels like crap, but I know that this is a tunnel that I get to go through. Dark night of the soul kind of stuff, where I get to go through. And because I'm a practitioner of the light, I know, I see the light at the end of the tunnel, but it's dark and it feels disgusting while I'm here. So these little Kundalini, that's what I was getting when I was meditating and asking about it, is that this is the Kundalini that we all have, these packets of life force energy, that now that we've been doing all this work and the shadow's releasing, and even though we're having a breakdown and it feels icky sticky, it's creating way, it's shaking up what had been caked in, baked in these unconscious patterns. Drinking 4 bottles of wine a week and thinking, oh yeah, I can sustain a healthy lifestyle like this. No, that's an old pattern that's getting blown out of the water, if you will. And so there's this activation. And finally, these new DNAs, what they call the junk DNAs within us, are saying like, oh, that old pattern, that old cock blocking, well, I don't know if the DNA would say that. I'm saying that, but in that way, those old patterns that kept us bound in a certain way that was fine, that we used up to a certain point, but that we're ready to disband now, are coming apart. And then as those things fall asleep, the DNA that were lit become unplugged, right? Matrix, Neo, getting unplugged from that stuff. Those DNAs then can dissolve, they can vanish, they can simply go. And the DNAs within us that know we are galactic, that know we are cosmic, that know we are here for a reason. If you're watching this show, then you know you are here for a reason. And it is to experience this life. I mean, ultimately, I can't put into your mouth why you're here. But there is a sense that if you're watching this, you have a feeling about what your path is. And even if it's just a little inkling of what really turns you on and makes you happy and brings you joy in this world, that's all it is. Just do that. Just be that. So that Instagram post at the end about us going home, if we learn to just say yes when we really mean yes and say no when we really mean no, when we really don't align. I mean, granted, your higher self is always going to give you like, hey, you got to, this is where we want you to say yes here, even though this feels uncomfortable, or, this is this gray area that we really get to tune in and to feel what is true to us in the moment. Yet ultimately, as we keep saying yes to the truth in our heart, and we stop saying yes to those things that are not true to us, this is direct connection to home, coming home. Heaven on earth is now. It's right now, and it's every moment we choose love over fear. It's every moment we practice that spiritual willpower to come back to realizing there's a much bigger picture going on within us and all around us, and realizing our interconnectedness to it all. So this one little can of wine brought on this huge thing. And I thank you, Wisdom Seeker Forever, because your question that you proposed to me on the Instagram, when I first got it, I was like, remember I responded back and I was like, okay, I'm going to sit with this. Thank you. Because I love when you guys write in and you're like, hey, can you talk about this? Can you talk about that? Because I just love it. I appreciate it, the community. And it sends us on different trajectories. But at first, when I first got that message, I thought, I don't know what the heck to talk about. Yet then I started having my transformation breakdown stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is all. This is totally what this is all about. So let's have a look at the comments. Okay, yes, that's right. So you were saying that you feel like you have some important job to do, but not sure what it is, and you're anxious to complete it, but you don't know what it is. So the important thing with that is to not be in a rush, is to not haste it. And remember, this week's weekly tarot energy forecast was all about that, was all about, like, we're in Mercury retrograde now. And you know what, because of these eclipses, eclipsing new things in, eclipsing old things out, we don't have all of the information. We don't know. All the cards are not on the table right now. So Mia, I invite you to just sit with what you have, with the information you have thus far, even though you have this feeling that you want to complete it, you want to do this and that. There's a part of the journey. Remember, it's always about the journey. I know it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but it's always about the journey and not the destination. It's like never about the destination, because it's all the people, places, events. It's who do you want to be en route to that destination? And this has kicked my butt personally over many years, because I've had very different, very high aspirations in different realms, on different paths of my life, only to get so far down them and to realize, like, whoa, I really actually don't want it like that. Let me reverse. And so being mindful as we take every step of the way towards and into vibrating as that which we know is our purpose, that which we know we're here to complete and share, is always, right, this path when we're wide awake. Yet this is the time to just relax, to keep meditating, keep allowing more information to be added unto you, and it will. And you will, if there's ever any force, then consider that it's not the time. If that's not the way, right? All is ease and flow. And when we create the correct conditions, we do our daily practices, our meditations, our freakouts, our nervous breakdowns, our, all this stuff. Just keep on keeping on and keep taking notes, keep gathering information. When you create the correct conditions, then more is added unto us. Under grace. Under grace. And as more is added unto you, you begin to know when it's time to act. So here's the God phone. Just in time. Hello? Blessings, dear God. Oh my God! Okay, God is saying, don't forget to read Will's comment. I won't, about the cigarettes and stuff. Okay, I won't. God says hi, everyone. Am I? God's all like, you're getting a little dramatic today, Tuesday. I know I am, but like, I feel like for 48 hours, I feel like I've been chewed for 48 hours with these kundalinis and these icky stickies and that headache that's finally gone. Oh, and by the way, God and everyone watching, I didn't, you know, like you can do one night of like kind of you're not getting the best sleep or missing sleep, but then it's like 2 nights in a row when that happens to me, plus the continued, like the 48-hour hangover, the big migraine-y headache and the icky sticky was not, I was really, I didn't even know if this show was going to happen today, God, because I was so out of sorts. So that's why I'm dramatic. But now I can laugh. Oh my God. Okay. God's going to have us read something completely different today that we usually don't. Yes, I have her book right here. Making the Gods Work for You. Yeah, I'm borrowing it from my mom. It's an astrological language of the psyche by Carolyn W. Casey. Okay, we're going to read about the moon. I love that. Okay, namaste. God says namaste, everyone. Blessings. Love you. Okay. Okay, so let's read Will's comment here. Cigarettes have been the wine for you. Pot as well, but really cigarettes. And also, yes, sleep. You finally got sleep last night. You know what? I finally did too, but it was very difficult. And I take one little melatonin often. I will do that in the evening. And I even wear the eye cover thing because I like the complete blackout. Get that inner melatonin, the pineal gland, really let it activate. But I do feel that last night there was better rest than the 2 nights beforehand. But so cigarettes has been that for you, Will. That's a big one. That's a really, really big one. Thank you for sharing that. So we're going to read, and then we're going to just review what we've been talking about. Okay? So making the gods work for you, and God was making the gods work for you, as recommended by God. And God wants us to read some of this portion of a chapter on the moon. So what are we to read, God? Okay. So Mia, if you're still here, and if you have water, right, in your chart, this may be very interesting to you. The moon governs our inner tides of feelings and moods. She reminds us that extroversion and introversion, animation and retreat are both necessary for a complete emotional life. The moon goddess provides a time or phase for every undertaking. As the moon waxes from new to full, we ride the tide out to initiate new projects. As the moon wanes from full to the next new phase, we surf back into shore. During this time, we sift, distill, and complete projects inaugurated on the outgoing tide. Okay, so I'm also getting to read something else. Where is God telling me to go? Oh, okay, this is awesome. The moon tells us the story of our spiritual lineage by suggesting that we each have a memory deep within of an ancient spiritual tradition. This lunar tradition is the custodian of our understanding that everything is interrelated: people, plants, animal, family, land, and planets. This truth wants to travel back to the modern world through each one of us. This truth wants to travel back to the modern world through each one of us. You know, and this makes me think about, because ultimately this is the big bravado. This is the big deal here, is it's like, you know, spending part of our time trying to figure out, you know, who am I? What am I supposed to do here? What's my purpose here? And then like once you start getting a glimmer of that, then it's like, then it's like the real work starts to begin, because then you get to really start showing up as that. And it sounds easy enough, yet in really showing up to that, what happens is we meet all the parts of us that are afraid of us being that, all the parts of us that have agreed to an otherwise version of existence from that over many lifetimes. So while you're having your breakdowns, pay attention and take notes. Use your phone. We all have a recorder. If you have a little journal, write things down, because I know for me, my nose is itching. Remember several 4D Trinities ago, like I couldn't stop itching, and Sara'i, who was online with us, told me that just means truth. So I'm going to say, okay, girl, we're going for truth here. Always, right? Yet you will get downloads. So in and amongst my crazy that I had over that last 48-hour period, I also was getting these like amazing aha moments. So as those old TARs were crackling through the DNA, percolating and populating in the Kundalini, boom, hulkinating, right? Like the Hulk, just like pop, 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 popping those buttons and like breaking, tearing through the fabric of the old self. And that new infusion of light that felt ecstatic and like orgasmic, and at the same time like hell on earth, because the TARs were getting disembiguated during the whole thing. But this was the, what am I trying to say here? Did I forget my point? I'm not sure. But it's the moving through that stuff. Okay, so yes, it's the rising up. It's that even in and amongst all that, though, there were these like divine, like, where the sky opened and this divine revelation happened. And this is where I'm saying rise up and pay attention. And even if it doesn't look as emotional as like bawling your eyes out and whatever, but even, you know, Wisdom Seeker Forever, I'm very grateful, because your query when you messaged me on Instagram and asked about, you know, can I talk about these eclipses and this emotional stuff that we're going through? I'm very grateful, because it made me really pay attention more as I was going through my stuff. I was like, oh, this is exactly it. So whether you feel it on a not so dramatic emotional level and just on a more subtle level, there's still going to be messages in your body wisdom. And you know what? We've put those messages in there for us. And we are responsible to pay attention and to listen when they come up for us. And that's what we're saying. Rise up to meet yourself in the icky sticky, in the DNA activation. Now, I think there's another comment. Let's see. Oh, blessings. Mina, dear, this whole show, I don't know, are you just joining us, darling? Because we've had, this whole first hour has been really, really powerful. And I've just been giving you props, my dear, for messaging me on Instagram to talk about these topics. So if you're just joining us now, Mina, when we're done here, go back and watch that first hour. Because if you haven't, if you've just hopped on, because it's totally in honor of your suggestion. So thank you, dear. I really appreciate it. And so you see, so this is a part of this when we pay attention, when we start to pay awareness to these downloads, as we start to break down and break through. What happens is, and I know that you're on this, right? Some of you we've spoken to specifically together. We're on this together. And this is a part of our spiritual path, is that the more that you surrender and you make that connection to your higher self, you hear your higher self all the time hanging out with you. And it's like constantly guiding you, like, or yes, or or no. And it's constantly telling you what to do and where to go, what to say and to whom, like that prayer in A Course in Miracles. It's constantly, it's like that's its job. It's like 24-hour. Oh, and remember that DNA activation meditation like we did randomly, that live stream last week or whenever it was recently? It was so weird because it was just like the universe was like, okay, you're going to do this now, like today in a couple hours, and you're going to put this up there. And I had no idea what we were going to do. And it was very strange because the whole time we were doing that meditation, I didn't know what was going to happen. And it was like I was getting fed. The voice of my higher self was like telling me exactly what to say, giving me like 3 or 4 or 5 words at a time. And then I would say them to you, to us. And then I'd be like, I don't know, gonna be said next. And then it would say it again. And then I'd say the next thing. And it's a trip when you live like that. Now, this was just for the meditation. And honestly, this has happened before when I've facilitated in these ways, where you channel your higher self for the highest good, right, of all. And this starts to happen, though, as you begin to master your time and space. As you begin to come into that divine alignment with your truth, and your Kundalini crackles and breaks open, and you awaken, and your light body starts to be given the correct conditions to just be what it is, to shine as white light, unbounded by the tars, unbounded by the shadows, the toxins, the patterns, the addictions, the habits, emotionally, the relationships, all these things that at once were blocking that light from shining. And so when you have that connection to your higher self, remember, I think it was last week's 4DT, we were talking about the voices that we hear. And what I offer to you, just a little recap, is that the way that you know that it's God, the way that you know that it's your higher self, which I feel God, we always say here, and God always says it on the God phone, that God is the experience, the feeling realization of oneness, the experience of oneness. God is not a person. God is not a man with a beard. God is not a woman. God does not have genitals or breasts. God is this feeling realization, this experience of unity, consciousness, of oneness. And you can have that. That's within you. That's what we are. And we can have that experience on a continuum, as we said earlier, when we keep saying yes to that which is true to us and stop saying yes to that which is untrue to us. Right? Like in that little Instagram post that we shared earlier. So for maximal results, and again, I know some of you, we've had these conversations, you know, where you once, I'm sorry, pardon me, let me finish. So these voices, when they're inside of your head, this is your higher self, this is God, these are your angels, right? This is the positive love and light crew. Voices outside of your head are whoever, whatever it is. Now, you can always ask, you know, who are you? Where's this information coming from? And validate whether you feel a resonance that you want to keep hearing that information from that source or not. The caveat is that when you're out of sorts, though, and your auras, like I was giving you this example last week where I had taken LSD, very strong LSD, had crazy experiences. And the aftermath was my aura was like Swiss cheese, letting in all sorts of entities, aliens, beings, like creatures and voices. Ooh, the voices. I mean, and I was like, I could have been clocked into the psych ward because I was just seeing into the dimensions and hearing voices through other dimensions and having exchanges with other beings from other dimensions when you are not grounded, when you are not choosing to go there in the white light and divinely guided by source. That's a very different thing, right? Then when you're open and your aura is not sealed and you're not grounded and those voices sound like they're on the inside, then it's different. Then it's not necessarily your higher self and not God and not your angels. So when you are grounded, sealed, aligned, connected to your higher self, to God, to source, universe, your Buddha nature, the name you would give it, that divine guidance that you hear on the inside is source, is your truth. That which you hear on the outside, questionable. You can ask, who are you? Where are you coming from? Again, though, when your aura is not sealed, grounded, aligned, and you're hearing voices on the inside, it is very easily that those entities, beings, information from sources that are not truly for our highest good get in, and they sound like they could be God. They sound like they could be your angels. They sound like they could be your truth. But when you're all depressed and disheveled and disoriented and you don't know what's what, it can get very confusing. So that aside, as you strengthen your ability to converse with your higher self, to be one with your higher self, to hear the voice of God through your higher self, you're given assignments. And you don't have to do them. You don't have to do anything your higher self says, but you'll start to hear that voice, that of truth, louder and louder and louder. And your voice of truth will actually if you let it, it will tell you everything, what to do, how to make the oatmeal. It'll tell you, like, you know, go to the loo. You know you need to go to the loo. Why are you still sitting here? Go relieve your body. Pay attention to the natural rhythms. It'll tell you, you know, it'll give you like the exact formula for how to do what to do next. And when you completely surrender, it begins to take you on an adventure. And for maximal results, and not that you have to do this all the time, you can, and it is a trip. I have lived this way. And generally, like I'd say, in all honesty, 80 to 85% of my day-to-day life is exactly just like whatever my higher self tells me to do. And the other 15%, I'm like, I want to play with my free will. And ultimately, your higher self always has your back. It's everything that it suggests and tells you is stuff that serves your higher good. It's never going to tell you, like, you know, go walk off a cliff. Well, I don't know what it's going to tell you, but it's whatever it's going to share with you is always going to be in resonance with your higher good. And for maximal results, like we were saying earlier, when you rise up in the face of these changes and you start to really say, okay, show me higher self, show me God, show me source. When your higher self says, do it now, when it gives you a suggestion and it says, do it now, and you do it now, that is very powerful. When your higher self says, do it like this, and it shows you how to do whatever it is, making the oatmeal, crossing the street, driving to Trader Joe's, whatever it is, when your higher self shows you, gives you a blueprint of what to do and how to do it, and you do it, what happens is you are contributing to the subtlety of the invisible realms. You are serving your purpose. You are at once surrendering this body-mind to participating in a way that is setting up the puzzle pieces of the higher good for the greater good of all. So we've heard this term that a butterfly's wings, right? Like one little flap of a butterfly's wings can create a tsunami in Brazil. Like if you're in, you know, China and the butterfly flaps its wings, you know, it can be felt all the way across the world. Well, this is the point that the higher self is wanting to share through me and with you today, is that, again, it may not be every moment of every day, and you may not hear your higher self all the time anyway, but if you do, and when you do what it tells you to do, and do it now, like when your higher self is like, do it now, do it, explore it. If it doesn't cause harm to you, which your higher self, again, is never going to tell you to do anything that's going to cause harm to you or to anyone else. It's always for the highest good of all. But like God, like you can pray, do your drums and light your candles and ask for guidance. And then the guidance comes and you're like, oh, well, I don't like that guidance. Can I have another guidance? It's like asking a question, pulling a tarot card, getting a card and being like, oh, I don't like that. Can I pull another card? And of course you can. You don't have to do anything that you don't want to. You have your free will. Yet there is a divine complexity in the interplay of when we surrender, because ultimately we are one. Let us remember that we are one soul. We are one heart. We are one wise, organizing, bubbling, frothing ocean. And when my higher self that's connected to truth, to God, to source, tells me to do something for the highest good in a specific way, and I know it's within my availability to do it, and I do it just like that butterfly flapping its wings, I don't know what it's doing out in the world or how it's going to affect you or other people, but I know that for the highest good, me showing up and doing what my higher self is guiding me to do is energetically in the invisible realm, setting up the perfect set points and conditions for 4D consciousness, for Christ consciousness, for truth, for love, for light, to be present in a greater and greater and greater propensity for one and for all. Do you understand what I'm saying? So for the maximal results, and really this is, I'm speaking to those of you out there who Know you are a master, whether you're a Reiki master or you've been on a path of mastering yourself through self-love, of mastering your mind, mastering the words you put out. Being a master is being sovereign, is being free from the ties that have bound you from the past, which is everything that we're talking about with these eclipses and this d.n.a activation, the Kundalini activation. When this stuff happens, honey, this is why we have these nervous breakdowns and these emotional calibrations, because we're leaving behind the old self. We're forgetting the pain, the shame, the blockages. And even if we don't know what the pain and the shame and the blockages were, it's still a heck of a release for all of that to go, for us to be free of those versions of ourselves. And then, hence the initiation. So now we get to show up in our greater light, being and embodying greater love. And remember, this is about getting what we've asked for. So we've prayed, we've asked. Again, we've lit our candles. We've done our Reiki, we've done our prayers, our energy letter, however it is. And we set our intentions, all these things with the full moon, the new moon, the eclipses, all this stuff. And you better believe that you're going to get what you asked for in some way, shape, or form. And so as we have these emotional breakdowns and these mental breakdowns to break through, this is a part of us getting what we've asked for. This is a part of us breaking down. When I was having that disgusting, icky, hellish ecstasy feeling yesterday and realized that it was Kundalini, which it is for you too, if it resonates, when you have those bubbling ups, and it doesn't always have to be like that. Often you can have a Kundalini raising activation experience and it just feels like a big orgasm, like your whole body is like, it feels like ecstasy. If you've ever taken ecstasy, where it's just like that cerebral spinal fluid is just like everything, woo, baby, on the up and up. But it doesn't always feel like that. Sometimes it feels that there's that polarity, right? As that spinal fluid, as that activation is happening, it's also bursting out and breaking through that tight webbing of those tars, those old beliefs and patterns that we didn't even know were there, that we were unconscious of, and now light is coming to it. So we are getting what we've asked for. So keep preparing yourself to receive, to be a container, to be a vessel, to receive that which you've asked for. Rise up to meet the tide. Ride the waves. Because if we've asked for this, this is your wave then. This is for you. This is for me. This is how we get to be initiated to this next level of what we know our truth is in the world. And so rise up to meet it. And then ride the wave. Don't try to control the wave. Rise up to meet the wave. Let me just check the comments. I think someone else hopped on here. Brilliant. Hey, April. It really is so perfect, even when it feels so uncomfortable sometimes. Okay, Mina says, we'll definitely go back. Yes, blessings. Yes, girl. I think you're going to get a lot out of this, Mina. April, I don't know, did you just hop on or have you been with us from the beginning? Again, anyone who's just hopping on now, I encourage you, if this is resonant, to watch that first hour of the show. Very powerful, and we hit very powerfully a lot of the main points. So I would invite you to go back and watch it from the beginning if you are guided. So as well, we think about these multiple relationships that we have in family and friends with beloved loved ones, and how these changes within us are interconnected with them, and how these shifts and changing tides within ourselves, because we're all interconnected, is definitely going to have an effect on those close to us and around us. And likewise, when they have their own shift and change and healing or healing crisis, it's going to reflect onto us those areas that we get to work on, that we get to be present in. Letting the 3D work for you. So I know in that little recorded part that I played for you, that change is calling, what I realized is when I was having all my Kundalini experience yesterday and feeling really frazzled. I mean, just feeling like there's just nothing to do. I just, you just, like I was saying, you just have to rise up and meet it and just ride those waves. and just feel like, what is this frequency? This is like going through the tunnel of where you're like, all those old ties of tars and grids and patterns are like burning off, and it feels just so disgusting and icky, but it feels ecstatic at the same time because you can feel your truth. Like a rocket burning in the central, your central pillar of light, your crystalline tube just on fire, burning that stuff off. Yet, we're continually guided to create the correct conditions so that this divine alignment can take place. And I remember, I was like pacing. I had to work yesterday, and I was like, in bits, as you know, if you've seen the first hour of this show. And I'm like, okay, body, what can I do for you? I had to go to work then in the evening and teach a yoga class. And I was like, what can I do for you, body? You know, because I could feel my body was, I had the shakes on the inside. And my body said, do legs up the wall with your yoga mat and your yoga block. And right away, I went to go and put like some background music on and light a candle and do all this stuff. My higher self was like, no, just get your freaking legs up the wall. Stop with the music. Stop with making it all the ding ding and the crystal bowl. Forget it. Just put your darn legs up the wall and let the 3D land take care of you. Let your 3D body, without the influence of any guided meditation, or like you don't have to keep, you know, there's a balance because you don't have to keep double, triple working it. And I know we get really good at double, triple working it. And I think it's a good thing. Do your legs up the wall at the same time, throw on a guided meditation that you love or that you've been working on. And at the same time, send someone healing Reiki. And at the same time, and do like all these multiple things. And my higher self was like, no, and this is a message. That's why it was on the recording earlier that the higher self wanted to share with all of us. Is it's like, let's come back to that simplicity of just being able to do one thing at a time, and allow that one thing that our higher self is guiding us to do, allow the wisdom of that one thing to show us to do what it's here to do. So we learn how to, in this 3D body, for me it was go upside down, put your legs up the wall with the yoga block. Don't put any music on, don't add anything, just let yourself be present. This is the wave that you get to ride, Tuesday, May Thomas. Be present with it. And at first I had all this resistance because I had that huge headache. And I was like, oh my God, my higher self wants me to go upside down. Isn't it going to bring more blood to my head? Is this like going to, like, my head's going to explode? My higher self is like, no, it's actually, you need that blood flow to help break up, to like infuse the blood through that part of your head to break up this, like, what felt like it was just this coagulated lump of tar that was pulsing in my head. And I thought, okay. So anyway, that's the message in that. It's being able to show up and do the work, those little works when your higher self says, really stop and take 3 breaths. Sometimes you might be driving, and so yes, you're going to have to do it while you're driving. But if you can, it's like, then just really stop and really take 3 breaths. Like really, your higher self says, get out of the chair and go and do this one yoga pose. And if it requires you to roll out your mat, master, do it, and do it now. Do it. This is what I'm saying. There's a thing that's built in for you, for your wellness, for your calibration, for your light body activation, for your higher good, but that is already and always built in and interconnected and interrelated to the higher good and the wellness of all. And so that's why we say, for maximum results, master up. When you know your higher self is saying, like, go and do that yoga pose, and it requires you unrolling your yoga mat, and you're like, you know, because you're working on something over here, a project over here, and you're like, this is like, it almost frustrates you because your higher self is like nudging you to like stop your flow over here and go do something over there, and you're like, I know, I felt that. And you can use your own will. You can say, okay, not now, higher self, later, right? Yeah, you can do whatever you want. But if you're going to do it, roll out that mat and really then turn that thing off and come into this thing, whatever it is that your higher self is guiding you, and do that yoga pose with intention, with breath, with grace, with full surrender. Like I just had to put the legs up the wall. And you don't need the music on and this and that. Just do the darn pose. And do it now. And do it how your higher self is showing you to do it. So there's a wisdom in that. And I pray and I affirm that it truly serves your path. So April says, yeah, that this is so perfect, even when it feels uncomfortable sometimes. Yes, it really is so perfect. I missed the beginning on you've been on for about 40 minutes. Okay, cool. Just ride the waves and observe the feelings. It takes practice to listen to yourself, April says this in the comments. It takes practice to listen to yourself. I'm just getting it, but it is so freaking powerful. Yes, sister. Woo, woo, I know. This is it. We're getting turned on and tuned in. So, in closing today, just knowing that these are cycles that we are going through with these eclipses, this d.n.a, this Kundalini activation, this realignment, and this further alignment with truth, with our higher self. Cycles are ending. Old cycles of you holding patterns of shame or of guilt, of trauma, of betrayal. These real personal, emotional patterns, for many of us, a lot of these cycles are ending. We no longer have to walk forward bearing that cross, if you will, with that story, if you will, beholden to us. These eclipses are about us being able to cut those cords, or those cords just divinely being cut for us. And then the reinitiation into the light of being that true, full self that is always here. And so we are in cycles. We are going through a cycle. And that's what's happening. We're releasing old cycles, sometimes consciously on purpose with our intentions, with our spiritual work, but also through the divine wisdom and intelligence of all of your higher self that knows there's been certain agreements we've made with shame, with betrayal, with pain, with guilt, with our bodies, with our monies, with our families, our friends, our loved ones, our intimate relations. There's agreements and contracts we've made. And what I'm telling you is that these eclipses are like, oh, flip to the last page of that contract. Well, don't you know it? We're coming to the end of this contract. And so things are wrapping up energetically. And that's what I'm saying, is that we'll feel this. If you're having these riding the waves, whether it's very turned up to 11 or it's just like, oh, at a 2 or a 3, but you're still feeling it, those little Kundalini pop activations, or that breaking through the tars and your breakdowns and whatever it is, that this is, again, the old d.n.a closing shop, dissolving, disappearing, and that new d.n.a awakening. We are ending cycles, those contracts, a lot of contracts and agreements we have made energetically with others, time, people, place, things, past lives, those things are ending. And it's like, woo, right? A whole new world. Well, that whole new world takes some learning, requires a learning curve. And that's the initiation, again, to rise up, be in tune with our higher selves, to honor with grace, to receive with grace that which is for the higher good of all. So remember, in closing, that this eclipse is also about us being unplugged and plugged back in. And there's this thing on Instagram going around that says everything works if you just unplug it and plug it back in. And like I was telling you earlier, another friend of mine on Instagram who was saying that this eclipse is like the whole universe, or at least the world, being unplugged and plugged back in. In many ways, this d.n.a activation, this Kundalini activation through these eclipses, of our prayers being answered, of you getting what you've asked for through your prayers, through your spiritual practices, your Reiki, your meditations, your intentions, your energy letters, your chanting, your drumming, all of it. But this is it coming to be. And our ability to acclimate with it is the lesson, is the new karma, is the new world, is the new earth, if you will. We got to talk about that. I've got a few thoughts on that. But it's heaven on earth is what I know. It's now. It brings us into the now moment, which anchors us always into our truth. And so consider, like we were using that metaphor of the Matrix, that part of the movie where Neo goes in and he sees himself in the pod and he's like the naked, slimy body, right? And then you see the push, 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 all the plugs being unplugged. Push. That's what's happening to us. We're getting unplugged with these eclipses. And when we work consciously with these energies, only those plugs that are the real plugs, the true plugs that connect us to our true divinity, source, love, light, power, which is always love. That's what's happening. That's where we get to find our new vibration, our new resonance. Wow. Very powerful. I think we're going to do, please hit the bell. If you like this, if you are a regular, please give me a thumbs up on this video. If you're not subscribed, hit the red button and hit the bell. Even if you are a subscriber and you're watching, I appreciate if you hit the bell. That helps you know when I've posted new videos. But also, you know, sometimes I'm guided to just like off the hook do a live stream meditation or a talk, and you'll get notified when you've hit the bell. And I feel like one's coming up. I feel like, you know, when I was meditating about this yesterday, I was getting the drums and the rattle. So especially if you do your own energy work on yourself in your meditations, drum and rattle. The rattle, breaking up, right? That's how we started our 4D Trinity today. Breaks up those old patterns. It breaks up the tars, right? And your drum, the heartbeat. Bringing forth, grounding, holding space, activating that light body, that truth, your tube. So thank you for your likes, for your shares, for your comments. Thank you for being here in the comment box, everyone. I'm so grateful. And thank you, Mina, for asking the question, you know, and like that, if there's ever anything that you have interest in that you want to know about, that I can possibly serve, let me know. You can either Instagram message me if we're friends on Instagram. You can send me an email. My information is in the show more box below. My email is there. If you're gonna just be like, hey, Tuesday, what would you think about doing a show, or could you talk about XYZ, LMNOP? And we'll see. And I'm very grateful. You know, I have a donate link in the show more box too, which you can donate to. And you guys have already started donating to this channel, and I'm like so touched. You know, the universe told me to do that. I felt like, I was like, I don't want to do that. And my higher self was like, no, you just go ahead and do that. And within the first week, people started donating. So thank you. I'm so grateful. It serves me in serving you. So I thank you with all of my heart, with all of my love. And we're going to wrap up here. And I'll just read. It takes practice to listen to yourself. I'm just getting it, but it is so freaking powerful. Oh, and Mina's saying namaste. Yes, yes. So blessings, everyone. Thank you again. As always, I pray and I affirm that everything that we share here fully serves your path of spiritual growth, your path of sovereignty, self-mastery. I am Tuesday May Thomas, and this is 4D Trinity, where we bridge heaven on earth through the divine unity of mind, body, and emotions. And I feel like we've done that today. So thank you for participating and being here with me, being a witness and being present. I'm so very grateful for this community. I love you. I really, really do. And I'm so grateful for you. Oh, thank you, April. So namaste, everyone. Enjoy a powerful week. Thank you again for being here. I'm going to sign out now. Namaste and so many blessings. You are love. You are light. We are that together. So it is.